Hello, and welcome to another episode of TMC, where we are here to help you take your relationship
From
from
surviving
surviving
to
to
thriving.
thriving.
Today on TMC, we will be discussing credit and marriage.
And while you're joining us today, go ahead and subscribe. Click the like button and turn on your notifications so you will be notified every week when we upload a video.
Yeah.
And last week, we talked to the TMC listeners about money in marriage. So today, we want to talk about credit in marriage or credit and marriage. And we wanted to come on. And as we started talking last week, we were so excited because we love to share our journey.
Absolutely.
And we thank God for everything that He's brought us through and learned and taught us financially and everything that He's blessed us with and brought us through. And we wanted to share that with the TMC listeners. Recap a little bit. Last week, we talked about budgeting.
Yeah.
We talked about having a plan for your money, telling
Yeah.
your money where to go so that your money doesn't go everywhere or anywhere it wants to go. We talked about to be financially literate
Yeah.
so that we can make better decisions with our money. We talked about doing it together as a couple. And we expressed last week, and we will express this week, that we're not financial advisors, but we're sharing with you all what worked for us.
Right. And one of the things I want you all to do, I want you to go back and listen to the prior episode with money and marriage. And we dealt with how to get out of debt. On today, we're going to discuss things that we're doing right now, since we got out of debt, how we're leveraging our credit.
So when we talk about credit,
Mhm.
Cedric and I learned a lot about credit, and we learned it by doing the wrong things first.
Absolutely.
So we did in the beginning of our marriage, when we got married,
Yeah.
I had more credit cards than I had money.
Mhm.
And back then, I bought things on credit because I had the card.
Yeah.
So the credit card balances were out of this world. And just, I mean, especially for a 19-year-old. But I had a gas card and didn't even have a car at the time. So that lets you know what kind of credit cards I had. I had a lot of credit cards. And when we first got married, my credit by that time was so messed up that everything we did buy on credit, we had to do it under Cedric's name because his credit was better than mine. And what I would say is that when I was growing up, I didn't know anything about credit.
Yeah.
Once I finished school and I started going to the first semester of community college, they start sending you all these applications,
Yeah.
sending you pre-approved credit cards. And I was just like signing paper, signing paper, signing paper, and accepting every credit card that I got. And I just bought things for myself, for other people, for gifts, and this, and that, because I really did not understand credit. I didn't understand that, I was paying all this interest on things. I didn't understand what it was going to do to my future. One of the main reasons we want to talk about this is because sometimes that happens. Sometimes when you first come into a marriage, one person can come in, just like myself, with your credit kind of, out of order
Yeah.
because you don't know. When you don't know, you can't do better. When you
Right.
do know, you can do better. So we want to share our mistakes as well as what we learned along the way. I was using credit wrong.
Right.
You didn't understand credit, so you weren't using it properly. But we've learned now today that you can use credit to leverage,
Yeah. Credit
and you
is
can use
good.
credit to your
Credit is
advantage.
good. Yeah.
Exactly.
It's good, but
Exactly.
it's how you use it. I think one of the
Exactly.
big problems, and this is a thing, act your ways. That's
Yeah.
something from
Exactly.
Dave Ramsey about acting your way. Just
And that is perfect because that's exactly what I was not doing when I was young and before we got married, didn't know any better. I wasn't
you
acting
didn't
my
have a
wage
job.
because I didn't have much money. My available credit on all of these cards was more money than I made in a month. And that's fine if you know how to use it. And at the time, I wasn't financially equipped in my head to know how to use it. So if you going into the gas station and you putting a bag of chips and soda on a credit card, that's a problem. If you going into the store and you cannot buy these shoes, and if you put these shoes on a credit card, it's going to take you 6 months to pay them off, paying $25 a month till you can pay them off. That's a problem. So once you learn to act your wage, you live a whole lot better.
Yeah.
Because even when you are leveraging your credit or using your credit for something, whether it's an investment or something else, you get in a mindset of acting your wage with everything you do.
Yeah.
So you never become that person again that's putting this stuff on the credit card that you can't possibly pay off. Some couples, the credit card debt starts with the wedding
Yeah, sure,
because
sure.
you're putting the dress, the shoes,
Yeah,
the flowers, the honeymoon, and all of this
yeah,
on credit. When you're getting married, you're excited about getting married. A lot of people want to have the wedding,
yeah.
they want to have the big flowers, the dress, the hall,
Right.
the party, all of this. And statistics show that many couples start their marriage off in debt
Yeah.
because of the wedding. And what you have to remember is that your credit tells people about you before you even step into the room. Credit is going to be important to your marriage because in order to purchase a home, they're going to check your credit. In order to purchase a car, we learned they're going to check your credit. In order to start a business or anything like that, they check your credit. Your credit
Yeah.
is important.
And not only do they check your credit, but even if you get approved, you have someone who can buy the same vehicle, and
And the
one
interest
person
rate,
may be paying 12%,
9.7%.
right,
Yeah.
and
And the
somebody
other
else
person,
paying
1.5 or
1.5%,
1.9.
and that's a big difference in payments. I mean, you're
Absolutely.
talking $300-400 in payments when you're talking 1% versus 12% over a
Right,
5 6 year
because your
period.
credit score determines that. Your credit score, your FICO, it determines what your interest rate will be with
Yeah.
companies. When a
How
company,
risky are you?
exactly, when a company looks at your credit score, it tells if you apply for, whether you apply for things together as a husband and wife or individually, as we had to do in the beginning
Yeah.
because my credit was already jacked up. If you a company, any lender is going to look at your FICO. They're going to look at your credit score because that tells them your worthiness. They're going to look at your credit report.
Let's talk about that. Let's talk about from a person that may not know much about credit. So credit, when you're
Mhm,
applying for a loan, it's three bureaus that's really popular
mhm,
that most people pull from.
uh-huh.
What are those bureaus?
Equifax,
Mhm.
Experian, and TransUnion.
All right. So with that, so you also have this thing called a FICO score. They pull from all three of these bureaus,
Mhm,
and whatever number is in the middle, that's your FICO score.
mhm,
And most of the time, when you purchase a home, that's how they find out your FICO score. And most of the time, they go off the FICO score. Yeah.
absolutely. So learning to use credit properly and taking care of your credit is important because even if you determine that you're going to be the couple, the family that does not use credit cards, you're still going to apply for loans. And you're going to apply for loans to get a mortgage. You're going to apply for loans to get a car. Like we said, you're going to apply for loans for other things.
Yeah.
And so credit is important even if you are not using credit cards.
Yeah. Yeah. So there's some things even with dealing with credit, I want to deal with because that's certain things that affects your credit score.
Mm-hmm.
It affects your credit score. One of the things that affects your credit score is payment history.
Mm-hmm.
The way you're paying your bills,
Mm-hmm.
make sure you pay your bills on time, make sure you're paying it
Okay.
at
Mm-hmm.
bare minimum, pay the minimum amount. And maybe we'll talk about why you shouldn't pay minimum balance in a
Mm-hmm.
minute. So that's another thing. So your payment history. So that's one thing.
Mm-hmm.
The next thing is how much you owe, and this is very very
And that was
important.
my problem.
Very very important. If you have a credit card with $1,000, right, $1,000 credit card limit, if you go over 30% of the available balance, for example, if you go over $300 on that card. Most people don't know this,
Mhm.
but it affects your credit score. Your credit score is actually lowered. It's counted against you if you go over 300. It actually counts against you. I know
Absolutely.
some people will do this and they'll get credit card and they max them out.
Max it out.
You know, the credit card
They
have
gave me
a
$1,000. I'm gonna spend a
spend a
thousand dollars.
thousand dollars and
Mm-hmm.
and things like that affects your credit. So
Mm-hmm.
those some things we want to share with you. So that's the second thing. So the length of history,
Mm-hmm.
like for example, let's say you had a credit card for a year versus you had a credit card for 4 years or 5 years or even
Mm-hmm.
10 years. I mean, if you have a credit card for 10 years, actually that helps your credit. That
Mm-hmm.
helps your credit when you have
Yeah.
these longer credit cards that you didn't had years in time. So the
That's
payment history, amount owed, length of credit history, and also new credit. And then the last thing is the type of credit you use. You have different types of credit.
absolutely because you have revolving credit, charge credit, installment credit, and non-installment credit.
So keep those things in mind when you're dealing with credit. Those things are
Absolutely.
very, very important.
And the reason why these things are important factors is because it's what tells the lender a lot about you. When he talked about the length of credit, if you've had a credit card for 15 years and you've never made a late payment, you always paid off your balance, you always make your monthly payment, then that tells a lender that you pay. It tells a lender that you pay, which is good for you. If you skipping payments or you're paying payments late, it tells the lender that you don't pay. So that's why these factors are important. How the amount of money you put on a credit card, it tells them how you spend. So are you a person that, governs your money and spends accordingly, or are you a person that puts it all on a credit card and worry about paying it later? That makes you a risk to them. So these things are very important when we're talking about credit.
All right. And one more thing for the credit score factor before we move on is the percentages within each one. So, for example, through the payment history count, about 35% of what your credit score is going to be is based on your credit history. The next thing is that amount I was talking about. You have that $1,000 limit and you exceed $300, it
That amount
affects
goes.
30%. So 35% of how much you pay, then 30% if you go over that threshold. So
Mhm.
I want you to just really keep that in mind. So if you not paying that bill versus if you exceeding that
Mhm.
30% limit, it costs almost the
Almost the
same
same.
amount against you. That's already 60%. 60% of how much you that's costing you for your credit. So
Wow.
so this
Yeah,
is that
yeah.
that's huge. That's
Yeah.
over half with just the payment and how much you owe on the credit
And
card.
it's funny because I've known those numbers for a while, but never put it together to show it's just very significant when you say it like that, because that means just two credit
Just those
factors,
two.
just two credit factors affects over half of your credit score.
Yeah.
Just two credit factors, the amount, your payment history, how you pay, and the amount you owe on your cards. Those two things affect over half of your credit score.
Yeah. And so now you have 15, the 15% is the length of your credit
How
history.
long you've
So
had
how
it.
long you had this credit card counts for
15%.
15%. After the 15%, now you have for a new credit card, it accounts for 10%.
Mhm.
And then the type of credit you use is come for another 10%. I do want to say this before I move on because this is very important. Payment history, your payment history is 35%. The amount you owe is 30%. Although both of them is the highest of what your credit score is going to be, I don't want you to get this confused because if you have slow payment or if you don't pay your bills, that payment history, it takes a lot longer for your credit score to go up versus how much you owe on it. Because if it's $1,000 credit card and you have 700 and you pay all of it off or under that 30%, the next time your credit is reported to those bureaus, your credit score it automatically start going up. But with the payment history, not paying your
That's
bills,
gonna linger.
that's going to
Mhm.
linger a little bit longer. So I want to make that clear before we move on.
Absolutely.
So we talked about some of the things, credit and how credit can affect you in a bad way. But now I want to talk about some things that we're doing now to really leverage the credit and how we're benefiting from it right now.
And what I would really say, baby, is to chime in on that. It's really how you responsibly use credit
Yes,
and how it can affect you
absolutely.
negatively when you don't responsibly use it. So we've learned some things along the way that helps us to use credit responsibly.
Yeah.
And it also builds our credit score and it gives us leverage to do things. And basically, when we say leverage, it gives us leverage to do things with credit and keep our cash.
Yeah.
And that's the way we balance it out. And I told someone this before. I think about what we do right now today, right? Pretty much you get a cell phone from T-Mobile, you got to pay for the cell phone $1,000, or you get a handbag, or you get some tires. You may put things like that on credit. And when I say put those things on credit, you might put those things on credit, but I would tell someone, and I always tell this to people, you shouldn't buy that new phone if you don't have the money saved to pay it off,
Yeah.
which means I may have this phone through T-Mobile and it's on credit. It's not costing me any interest because that's the only That's the way you want to put things on credit when it's
Yeah.
not costing you any interest. So it's not costing me any interest.
Credit card
But
won't
if
like you
I
to
did,
say that, but
I know, right? But if I decide tomorrow, I can give T-Mobile this $700 or this $800 and pay this phone
yeah.
off. If it has
If we don't have it in the
exactly,
bank, we'll not pay for it. But we will
exactly,
put it on credit. And I'm not going to talk specifically about what type of credit cards we have. But one of the things you can look for, even with credit cards,
cash back.
look for credit cards with incentives.
Hmm.
Credit cards with cash back. We use credit cards to get cash back. I mean, we have the money and we pay the credit card every, not
Every week,
monthly, we paying it
weekly.
weekly.
Hmm.
We
Because
put it on
again,
credit, we put gas on credit,
yeah,
but we're not getting charged interest for it because we're paying it right off. But at the end, or however we choose, we're getting points back,
mhm.
which bring giving us money back.
And that's what I was going to jump in and say, because that's the important part. As a couple, we talked about it and we decided we looked for credit cards that would give us the largest amount of cash back, the
Yeah.
credit cards that had rewards and incentives. But the way we do the credit cards is simply everything, especially one of the credit cards we use for everything, like he said, gas,
That's our
groceries, all
everything
of
card.
gas, groceries, going out to eat. Well, we would do these things on a regular during the week anyway. So that credit card is a replacement for my debit card. However, what is agreed from Team Francis is that at the end of the week, which means Friday for us, on Friday, everything that was put on that
It's
card
getting paid off.
from the last Saturday to that Friday has to be paid off, paid in full. When we put things on the card, is because of no interest. You know what I'm saying? Is
Yeah.
when
That.
this card has no interest and there is a such and such bonus points for every reward points or whatever it is. But if we have a credit, because you also have credit card companies that will do that. They'll have, if you purchase between January and June, it's no interest. Anything that's purchased between January and paid off before June is no interest. When credit cards have incentives like that, then if you are replacing the TV or replacing your cell phone, then you can put the TV or the cell phone on that credit card, and then you still have the $1,000, right? Because you already had the $1,000 because you don't buy things that you can't afford.
Right.
You have the $1,000, but you don't want to pull your $1,000 out of your savings account to put it over here. So you have the $1,000 sitting here, but you put the cell phone or the TV on your credit card, and it has no interest for 6 to 12 months.
Yeah.
And then what you do with your regular check, your regular payroll check, you take 50, 60, $100, drop it on this, drop it on that, because now you have 6 months and you still have the $1,000 that's there for that device or that item. So if you wanted to, you could pay it off and be done with it. And in essence, it's like you're kind of putting something in an on installment when it's not really on installment, because it's not costing you more money.
Right. The reason why I love this, what she was saying, the reason why I love it, because even if I have a, let's say, a year no
Hmm.
interest, that allow me whatever. If I pay, if it's $3,000, $4,000, whatever it is, we get it with 12-month no interest. What it do? It allowed me to keep my $3,000
Keep my
and
cash.
use my
Hmm.
$3,000 in other ways. I can use that money to invest, or I can use that money to make more money while I'm getting this free interest. So basically, I'm leveraging credit. I'm basically utilizing this no interest opportunity to do something else with my
With the
money
money. Hmm.
and then pay them back later. Leveraging
Absolutely.
it.
And it actually, while we're talking about it, I think about, we actually have a lot of different things that we do. And I mean, we started we talk about it occasionally with friends, with family members. We talk about, different things we do as far as how we leverage our credit.
Yeah.
And so over the years, we've learned different tips on how to leverage our credit. And when we do that, it's a lot of different benefits to it. Like I talked about the fact that the $1,000 is still sitting there. If I choose for it to sit there, it's still sitting
Yeah.
there in my savings account, and I have it in case something happens, or I have it in if I want to pay it off. I have $1,000, but I allow myself more time to pay it off. But then Cedric talks about another aspect that we do,
Eh,
because the other aspect.
It's kind of funny because I'm thinking about it, because you look at it, it's really crazy. So she basically the same opportunity. Let's say the whole credit thing, no interest, no year. She's looking at it from an aspect of she have money in the savings account. I'm looking at it from an aspect of I have
Money to
money to
invest.
invest.
Yes, you are
This one of the
different.
things. Yeah, we're definitely different with this because she's the type of person she want to let you
I'm gonna hold
put the
on to
money
it.
into the savings account and just sit there. I'm not that type of person. I'm like, you know what? That money just sitting in a savings account is just parked. It's
That's
like,
the
man,
truth.
put that money to work.
Yes.
So I want to take that money out and I want to put that money to work. I want to invest it in something. I want my money to continue to move because in my mind, that's why money is called currency because it's moving. And if it's sitting in the savings account, it's not moving at all. So I believe in moving money. She's
She
comfortable with
believes in
saving.
holding
But
money.
this is a great thing. I mean, even in our
Absolutely.
marriage,
Yes.
the way we
Yes.
balance each other out, because here's the thing, and I'm gonna be real with you. There's been some investments just this year. I'm not gonna speak numbers or whatever, but there's been some investments, and she had to tell me when to stop because she wouldn't have told me to stop. I'm telling you, everything we had in the savings account would be in investing right now.
And again, so that is again a team because
No,
that's what a
we
couple that
balance.
we're
Yeah,
partners. We're
yeah,
partners, and we everything, and that's why when you were talking about it and you were talking about the
yeah.
investment part,
It's awesome.
I'm smiling because that is us. That's who we are.
Yeah,
We are completely different with that.
different.
I told you guys that when we started out married, I had bad credit. It took me years to recover from that. So then my mindset was all like, hold on to my money, hold on to my money. Well, my husband is like, no, we need to invest, move it,
Yeah,
grow it, move it, grow it, move it, grow it. But we balance each other out. And this is why even last week we talked about it and we will continue to say this. You have to operate as a team
yeah,
because he knows how his mind works and he
yeah.
knows he has an idea and a vision and we agree even when we're talking about moving. No, not we're
Yeah.
not gonna let the money sit here. Let's move it. We agree upon the amount that we're gonna move. We agree upon the amount that we're going to keep staying.
I want to talk about it a little bit because this whole situation. I mean, this just happened a few months ago.
Yeah.
So I'm investing in something, and I originally come to you. I'm like, hey, babe, I want to invest this amount of money or whatever. You're like, oh, okay. Then so I put the investment in, and it's doing well. So I'm like, hey,
Mhm.
babe, I need some more money, and so I'm asking you, looking at, and now you're like, okay, and you do it again. And so after this, you're like, oh no, that's it. We ain't investing no more. But then I come to you, I'm like, babe, you gotta look at long terms and this. And if we do it right now, this can amount with this much money. If we do it right now, and you looking at me, you said at first you said with this one, you're like, nah, it's already you already got too much money out. But then I came to you again, and you finally I don't we agreed. And this
Mhm.
is the thing because we're so different. When she's on that reserve thing,
Mhm.
and I'm on that move thing, that's what really helps us. It
Yeah.
balances us out, and I respect the reserve. I
Mhm.
respect that when she say no way, hit the brakes. I respect that because I know who I am,
Mhm.
and I know every now and then I need some brakes pushed, or man, I will go crazy.
Right, right.
And on her hand, she's the brakes. So she don't like to move. She rather have it in there. So here I am. We having this conversation,
Mhm.
and she trusts me enough where she say, you know what, okay, babe,
You
I
got it.
don't feel comfortable doing it, but I trust
You
you.
got it. We're going to go
And
a
it's
little bit further.
right.
Yeah.
So we
Mhm.
trust each other, and we're doing this in partnership. I mean, it's not. I'm not doing any investments and doing stuff behind our back. If we agree together, let's say we do the investment and we lose it all. We lose it all. We made the decision to do it
Together.
together,
Yeah.
and I think that's a very important key. Even to add to this, make sure everything you do. If you're gonna save,
Do it
save together.
together.
If you're gonna
Yes.
invest, invest together. Do it together. Do it together, and make sure you have that.
Absolutely. And I'm smiling because I'm like you jumped ahead to the investment part, but it credit, saving, spending, investing, all of it.
Yeah,
It's we talked about it last week. We
yeah,
will continue to say this because it works for us.
yeah.
Again, we're not financial advisors. We're a married couple.
Clear, we're not.
Exactly. A couple that has been married for almost 23 years.
Yeah.
So we've had some trial and
Roller
error.
coasters,
We've
boy.
had some
Yeah.
trial and error where we've learned some things. And this is why we come on here every week on TMC to share with you what we have learned, to share with you our experience. And our experience has been that we've learned to leverage credit to do the things that we want to do in life. We've also learned to invest, and when not, we learn to do everything as a
Yeah.
partnership. We do everything together.
And I kind of, I kind of want to do this because I
Yeah.
want to slow down because
Yeah.
man, we
We
get
get
excited about
excited
this.
every time.
But I do want to slow down about this because here's the thing, and I want you to see the cycle. It started off, we got married,
Hmm.
we got into debt.
Hmm.
We got into debt. The credit owned us.
Hmm.
We had no power. So we were enslaved to debt, right?
Hmm.
But here's the thing, we paid off the debt, we began to save, and now we're able to again invest in ourselves. So it's get out of debt, save your money, invest your money, and it just flips. It's like a debt in reverse. Now I can use credit or my money or whatever we want to do. We
Absolutely.
can use it to do the same thing and more.
Yes.
You're not enslaved to a job. It's easier to do something else when you don't have that debt holding over your head.
Oh wow. Yeah,
When
yeah,
you don't have
yeah.
that debt holding over your
Yeah.
head, I mean, it's so easy to no, we ain't gonna do this because of that, because we don't owe nobody. We don't owe
and
nobody
that and
nothing.
that's the word. You're enslaved to the lender. Yeah, that
No.
we you definitely what you said something, and you talked about when we first started out, the debt owned us.
Yeah.
And the debt owned you, which means you keep getting up every morning, going to a job that you don't
Working
like.
overtime, you don't want to work.
Right. And then you come home tired, fussing at the kids, upset with the wife or
Yeah.
the husband every time they look at you because you're tired and you're not happy and you have all this stuff that you need to pay for. And this is something when all the way jumping all the way back to when he said act your wage. A lot of the reason why finances is one of the greatest things, the greatest challenges for marriages is because it reaches to so many different areas. And tonight we're talking about credit, and we're talking about knowing how the importance of knowing how to use credit and not being slave to your credit. So your credit or your debt, the debt that you have
Yeah.
becomes your master. And now it's telling you what you can and cannot do. Now it's controlling what you can and cannot do because everything is about paying these bills.
Yeah.
We used to call it back in the day living like the Joneses. So you're trying to live up to what everyone else has, and you really buying things that you can't afford, spending money that you don't have. And now it's controlling you. It controls how you feel, it controls what you do, it controls how far you can go. But when you flip that and you learn to pay off this debt and leverage credit to your advantage and grow yourself and grow your finances, now you're free to be who you were created to be. Now you're free to have the happy marriage that you intended to have. You're free to spend time with your significant other, to do things like vacation
Yeah.
and not worry about how you're going to recover
Yeah.
after you get back home. You're free to do things with your children or spend time with your children and not have to worry about all these other things.
Yeah.
So it is very, very important. And when we talk about credit, even when we do this at church, it is always my hope that people understand you have to come to a place where you learn these things and where you're able to do better. Because when we started off sharing, we started off marriage, that was a part where I didn't know anything about credit. I didn't know any better, and I wasn't doing any better.
Yeah.
I was slave to the lender
Yeah.
because everything, it was like pay $50 on this car, turn around and put $25 on it. Pay $50 on this car, buy a pair of shoes for $30. Turn around, and it was just a constant cycle. And what it starts off is, I'm not gonna put more than $200 on this car. Then next thing you know, you got $500, $600 on the car, and now the card is maxed out, and all you're doing is making it. So you become enslaved to that.
Yeah.
You're constantly doing the same thing over and over. And what we're talking about today is your pathway to financial freedom, your pathway to creating generational wealth for you, for your children, for your future, and for your family. I know that maybe there are people out there that believe don't do credit. Credit is
And if you
horrible. Don't
if
do.
you don't believe
And
that,
if
don't do
you
it.
if you
Yeah.
don't, then that's fine. Don't do that.
We're just talking
But
about
if
what works for us.
right, if you gain wisdom,
Yeah.
if you gain wisdom and knowledge, and you have
Have to
to
be
have
disciplined. You
exactly.
have to be
You have
disciplined.
to have discipline.
Yeah.
You have to have discipline because listen, this is something I tell people all the time, and I tell myself all the time. There's always going to be a sale.
Yeah.
There's always going to be a sale. There's always going to be another handbag on sale. There's always going to be another pair of shoes on sale. There's always going to be a sale. So we tell ourselves that this is a sale. This is a one-time deal. I got to put this on. But once your mind shift, and for me, I believe that's part of the reason why I have that put it there and hold it, because I remember the time when I did not do that. And when I learned the state that I was putting my family in, unbeknownst to myself, because I didn't know. I didn't know that just because you were paying things, what if something happened?
Yeah.
I didn't know that. And now that I know that, I do better. So I encourage you, sit down with your spouse, sit down with your husband, sit down with your wife, make a budget, make a plan, talk about your debt to income ratio, because your debt to income ratio tells you what you can and cannot afford. When you're getting ready to, when you want to buy a home, you purchase in a mortgage, they look at your debt to income
Yeah.
ratio, because if you
You
make
can have a 750, eight
exactly,
hundred credit, but debt to
exactly,
income
you can
ratio bad, you
exactly.
still won't know.
If you make 100 grand, but your bill, you make 100 grand a year and your bills is 99.5, your debt to income ratio is horrible. So you really can't afford it. Doesn't matter how much or how little money you make. Your debt to income ratio is important. Help you calculate your debt to income ratio. So you want to know your FICO score. If you haven't done it, you can go to freecreditreport.com, put your credit report, pay a little bit extra, they'll give you a score. Or if you have typically your banks, certain banks, if you have certain debit cards, sometimes with
The
your bank,
apps.
yeah, with your bank debit card, you can pay a little bit per month and they'll give you access to your credit score.
Yeah.
And your credit score is important. You want to know where you are. I said this earlier and I will say it again and again and again. Your credit score tells people who you are before you show up.
Yeah.
A lot of people look at your credit score, and for you as a couple to do what you need to do, those things are important. So take a look at your credit score. Sit down, decide with your spouse. Cedric and I talked about being different. We are different, but we determine what works for us.
Yeah.
So even though we see things differently, we talk it out and determine what works for us, so we can leverage credit, so that we can save, so that we can invest, so that we can live our best life and be free. We have a budget, we have a plan, and we also leverage our credit, because initially I was afraid. I
Mhm.
didn't want credit cards. I was like,
I remember that. Once
yeah,
we paid off debt, you didn't want
once
them.
that stuff was over with, I'm like, no, I don't
Yeah.
want. Well, when we first bought our first home, we were told pay stuff off and close it,
If you close off a credit card, it affects your credit
because
score.
that affects your credit, your length of credit
Yeah.
history. That's what it affects, because it's better for you to have the card for 10 years and put $100 on it.
But here's the thing. Here's the thing. I do want to say this. If you really have a struggle,
Oh
if you
yes,
really
yes,
have a
yes.
struggle, you know what? Do whatever you have to do. I
Get rid
mean,
of it.
let's take the
Hmm.
credit off the table. If you have that type of struggle, hey, close them out.
Hmm.
Do whatever you have to do. Because at the end of the day, you know you. I don't want to get it
Yeah.
crossed up to
Absolutely. And
what we
that's
do.
that's
Yeah.
why
So
that's why I said that we're not financial advisors, and you have to sit down and do
you have to
what
do
works
what's
for
best for
you
you,
as a
right?
couple. And you have to, because that there was a point in time in my life when I could not handle credit.
Yeah.
And I know that I could say I would not have said that then, but I can say it now, because hindsight is
I mean,
2020.
you see the benefits of
Exactly.
that. So
Hindsight is 2020. And when you look back and say, I wasn't able to do it.
yeah,
I wasn't able to pay a card off and see that available balance and leave it alone back then. Now my goal is like anytime and every week I want to see that card at zero. That's my goal every week, to see that card at zero. See that card at zero. That's the goal every week. And that's what I'm going after. So if you are the person that your mind shifts, then you're able to do what we're talking about, leveraging your credit. But if you know, be honest with yourself, sit
yeah.
down with your spouse, and if you know I'm not there yet, I can't do this, or we're not there yet, we can't do this, cut them up, burn them.
No, good credit score. I mean, yeah, you want to because the
Yeah.
most important thing is getting out of debt. So
Absolutely. And removing what we talked
mhm,
about last week, removing that challenge from your
yeah,
marriage. So even though this is something that the Francises do, if this is not going to work for the whoever's, then they can't do that, and they have to do what works for them as a couple.
yeah. I wanna close with this. What I really want for every last one of the listeners, tell you life is so much different on the other side when you
Yes.
transition, when everything flip. We live both lives.
Mm-hmm.
We understand, we know the emotional roller coaster, we know the
Mm-hmm.
stress
Yep.
behind it. We understand. Here's the thing: do not allow debt to determine your destiny.
Mhm.
If money wasn't an issue in your life right now, what would you be doing?
If you enjoyed today's episode of TMC, go ahead and subscribe. Click the like button and turn on your notifications so you will be notified when we upload a video every week. If you're listening on iTunes, rate the podcast and leave a review. Head on over to our leadership podcast, Lead to Greatness, where my husband is interviewing entrepreneurs and great leaders every week.
So I want to thank you for joining us today on TMC. Looking forward to hanging out with you again on next week as we continue to help you take your relationship from surviving to thriving. Bye. See you next week.